What's up, everybody? Jay Weitzner here, talking to you about everything that is muscle system. So, I'm a certified muscle system specialist, and last time I did a little video on why the knee is not just the knee. So, today I'm going to talk to you about why the hip is more than just the hip. And I'm talking about this because a lot of people have a lot of pain and mobility issues, and they seek practitioners that focus all the attention on the location that hurts them, right? And that's fine, because that may work sometimes, but sometimes it just doesn't work, right? So there's that overarching idea that a local sensation must mean that there's a local problem, which must mean that a local solution is required. Again, if that works, then that's awesome. But there's lots of times that doesn't work, and there's a lot of people out there that aren't happy with the results that they're getting or not getting, and they need to be able to turn to a different solution. So hopefully I can continue to shine some light on some other options that are different from what people are currently trying. So again, why is the hip not just the hip? Or why is more than the hip the hip? So let's check it out real quick. The hip, right? We're talking about a joint, and we're talking about this bone, right? This like pelvic bone, and this bone, this sort of upper leg bone. And we call this the hip joint. So people may think, hey, if I have something wrong in my hip hurts me or something, we better look there to see what's going on. And listen, if there's been an impact injury to that spot, it's a great idea to look there. And if there's some disease there, it's also a great idea to look there. So that's fine. But let's talk about sometimes, or maybe why we should look at other places, and why I look at other places, and why I don't even really look at places, I look at something different. But so check it out. Why is the hip more than just the hip? Well, here's one reason. If I grab this bone, would we all call this the hip? Right? Let's get a good close up there. Would I call this the hip? Probably it's part of the hip bone, right? It's part of the hip joint, rather, this bone. Okay. If I grab this, would this be the hip? We'd probably say yes, because both of these bones make up the joint. Well, let me ask you a question. What if I grabbed this down here, the knee, if you will? What if I grab the knee? Would anyone say that's the hip? Most people would say no, it's not the hip. Here's why it is the hip. Ready? Watch this. If I grab this and I start turning this, hey, look what's happening over here. That's right, it's moving. The hip's moving. If I move this end of the bone, that end of the bone moves. So if I grab the knee, that affects the hip. It's kind of interesting, right? So that could mean that anything affecting the knee, moving the knee, not moving the knee, stabilizing the knee or whatever, that's also affecting the hip. So the knee is the hip, okay? And let's just play that out. What if I grab this bone? Because this bone is also part of the knee. So if I grab something here that moves this, am I affecting this bone? Many times I am, because there's a lot of muscles that cross this bone, that cross this joint, that attach to both bones. So I got muscles that cross this joint attached to this bottom bone, attached to this bone, which cause this bone to move or not move or whatever. So that means sometimes when I affect this bone, I'm affecting this joint. That's interesting. Remember, I'm talking about this hip right here. What if I grab this bone over here? Is this part of the bone, this part, is this right hip joint? Is it the left hip joint? Well, not really, right? Or is it? Because look, if I grab this bone and I move this bone, I can't help but to move this bone. They're attached. So I move this, and look at that. This bone moves. So now anything affecting or pulling on or affecting this part of the pelvis affects this hip. Man, so now the right side of my pelvis is I can almost consider it my left hip joint in a sense you can. How about we look at this bone right here, and I tell you there's a muscle that attaches from this bone, your upper arm bone, all the way down to this bone. So that means if I move this bone, there's some tension being transmitted to this bone, which means it's moving or not moving or affecting this bone. Well, this bone is half of the hip joint. So that means when I'm doing stuff with my arm, it's affecting my hip. Certainly affecting it in some way. So now I got to consider my shoulder joint and this bone when I'm thinking about the hip. Sometimes, yeah. So without going too crazy, right? This is just a glimpse as to why sometimes this really holistic view, which is the view that a certified muscle system specialist takes, why your whole body may be playing a role in how other parts of you feel. It's interesting, right? And here's sort of the kicker that I'm going to talk about another time. As a certified muscle system specialist, I'm not interested in parts. I'm not interested in locations. I'm actually interested in movement and positions. Movements mostly, right? So it's weird. I'm looking for movements that may not be quite right. I'm not even looking for locations. So someone comes to me and they're complaining about a sensation they don't like in a location. I'm looking for how the muscle system controls their movement in positions. I'm looking for a whole different thing. So hopefully that at least opens your eyes more and gets you thinking more. If anyone out there has not experienced the success they want and they're looking to move better so they feel better, reach out, give me a call. We'll set up an evaluation, a consultation, we'll talk. We'll see how I can help you. My name is Jay Weitzner. I'm one of the owners here at Symmetry Muscle Health. Call me, you'll see all the links and all the information. Take care, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.